The course of the French Revolution. Having drained the treasury to support the Americans in their Revolutionary War, King Louis XVI was left with no other choice but to squeeze more taxes from the people of France. On the 5th of May 1789, he called for an assembly with representatives from the First, Second and Third Estates. Well aware that the landless peasants had no means of paying any more taxes, he proposed the idea of the nobility and clergy paying taxes. An idea promptly shot down by the two elite estates. Already burdened by heavy taxes, the Third Estate was enraged by the First and Second Estates' refusal to pay. It broke away from the Estates General and formed its own National Assembly. On 20th June 1789, the members of the Third Estate got together in a tennis court and began to draft a constitution led by Mirabeau and Abbé Sieyès. On the 14th of July 1789, the city of Paris woke up to King Louis XVI, ordering troops to move into the city to prevent the Third Estate from taking over the rule of France. In fear of the troops opening fire on the citizens, 7,000 people gathered and formed a people's militia. They went on a rampage, breaking into government buildings in search of arms for self-defense. They turned east and even stormed the fortress prison of Bastille, hoping to find arms. Even the people in the countryside participated in the riots. Misled by rumors that the lords of the manor had hired brigands to destroy crops, peasants attacked the chateau. They looted the hoarded grain and burnt down documents that contained lending details. Nobles and lords fled their homes to neighboring countries. People were not only protesting the taxes imposed by the government, but also the high price of daily bread. Unable to control the riots, Louis XVI finally granted recognition to the National Assembly and surrendered his absolute power to the Constitution. On the night of the 4th of August 1789, the National Assembly abolished the feudal system of obligations and taxes, forced the clergy to give up their privileges, and all the land owned by the church was confiscated. The treasury that was buried deep in debt consolidated assets worth at least 2 billion livres. In 1791, the National Assembly completed the draft of the Constitution, handing over the power to the legislature, executive and judiciary institutions. But the drawback of this government was that only men above 25 years of age who paid taxes worth 3 days of laborers' wages were eligible to vote. And to qualify as a member of the assembly, a man had to belong to the highest bracket of taxpayers. The power of governance still remained with the rich of the society. The upper class formed political clubs to discuss government policies and implement them. Among these prosperous clubs, there was also one very powerful club named Jacobins, which included small businessmen, artisans, and laborers. The leader of the club was Maximilien Robespierre. The king, in the meanwhile, to safeguard his role in the country, quietly entered into a secret pact with the King of Prussia, who was also worried about the uprising in France. The neighboring countries too planned to send troops to help them. But in April of 1792, the National Assembly declared war on Prussia. It was a war against kings and aristocracy all over Europe. But it brought more economic difficulties to the people. And on the 10th of August 1792, a large number of Parisians, angered by the short supply and the high prices of food, stormed the king's palace and held him hostage. The assembly then voted to imprison the king. Elections were held, and this time, regardless of the taxes, all men over 21 years of age were eligible to vote. the newly elected assembly, now called the Convention, declared France a republic on the 21st of September 1792. King Louis XVI was sentenced to death by a court on charges of treason on 21st January 1793. Robespierre's government placed a maximum ceiling on daily wages and prices of commodities. Though it brought equality among the citizens, this period from 1793 to 1794 came to be known as Reign of Terror, as Robespierre followed a severe punishment strategy. Ex-nobles, clergy, and even members of his own party who violated the law were arrested and tried in courts. If found guilty, they were beheaded by the guillotine. Do you know that in this short span of 1 year, more than 15,000 people were guillotined? Robespierre implemented his policies so relentlessly that his own supporters found him overwhelming. Finally, he himself was convicted by a court in July 1794 and guillotined. Thus, the rule of the Jacobins ended, and the Directory rule controlled by the wealthier middle class took over. This new rule denied voting powers to the poor. 2 elected legislative councils were set up, and a directory made up of 5 members, known as directors, overlooked these councils. More often than not, the directors and the councils did not get along with each other, and the councils sought to dismiss and replace them. In the midst of this political instability, a new face emerged, that of a young general named Napoleon Bonaparte, who eventually led a coup in 1799 and proclaimed himself leader of France. Thus, the French Revolution finally came to an end, but France entered a 15-year military rule.